Hello and welcome to In the Cool of the Day. I am your host, Tia Young, and today we dedicate this segment to anyone who has lost someone special in their lives, whether it be a relative or a friend. Our special guest is a Telly Award winner and an Amazon #1 best-selling author. She is a born-again Christian, former member of the Senior Executive Service Corps with the Department of Defense at the Pentagon, and a retired Air Force colonel. Professionally, our guest is known as a transformational and leadership development strategist. She is a Georgetown University Business School graduate and helps women to grow and develop into God's precious jewels of leadership influence, impact, and purpose through speaking, coaching, training, and counseling. Please welcome Dr. Mary M. Gillam to our set. Dr. Gillam, welcome.
Thank you, Tia, for having me. It is just a pleasure to be with you again. I've been with you on many occasions, and so it's really good to be back again.
Yes, and I wanted to share with our viewers that 5 years ago is when I really started my stint with FPA, and I didn't know anything about media, and you were one of my first guests. So thank you so much. And I'm so proud of all of the accomplishments that you have made in the last 5 years. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm so honored that you took the time out to come and spend with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's get started. Can you tell the audience a little bit about your background, beginning with your amazing grandmother?
Oh, I just love to talk about my granny. I was raised by my paternal grandmother. We are from North Carolina. And my grandmother, for those who may not know, she had 17 children, and she was married at 14. And then she was widowed at 48 with other kids left at the house to raise. And then she was not beyond doing something that I just thought was extraordinary, and that was that she took her 4 little grandkids in, who at that time needed a home. And we went to stay with my grandmother. And we stayed there until we graduated from high school. Wow. And so I just credit my grandma and my faith for just helping me to just become the person that I am today.
And speaking of your faith, I mean, the 5 years that I have known you, you have just been such a wonderful inspiration. You're a woman of humble beginnings, and even though you've had all kinds of outstanding careers and just done different things, you're just a blessing to be around. And I just wanted to share that with you. Let's talk a little bit about your faith in God. Mm-hmm. You've said that, so talk a little bit. How did that fashion you, inform you to this very moment?
Oh, I just love that question because as a young girl, I often tell people, I really came to know the Lord as a young child, and it was really based off of my grandmother setting the example. She didn't just say, you guys are going to go to church. No, my grandma took us to church. Even though she couldn't drive and she had gone blind, my aunt would actually drive us. But it was the fact that my grandmother had always said, no, we're going to go. And we had, in our home, we had prayer, Bible study often, and I used to tell people we were in the church where the lights were on or they were probably off, But it was because of that example that my grandmother introduced me to the Lord, that I just asked the Lord to come into my heart. And where it just has really benefited me over the years is, and I always love to give this example, is when I went off to college, I started out and I thought I had enough money just to find out I didn't. And I was like, oh Lord, what am I going to do? But I remembered what my grandmother instilled in me and what I knew to do. I went back to my dorm room, fell on my knees and prayed and asked the Lord to work it out. And he did. I got up, went back over to the financial aid office, and they were able to provide me with some extra money. But I said, if I had not known the power of prayer so early in my life, because I was probably 17 years old at that time, but I knew that God would do it, and he really did, because we've taught, my grandmother did not have the means to send me to school, And yet, I thought I had enough money. And then the Lord did not just do that, but he blessed beyond that, because I ended up getting scholarships later on. And that really worked out tremendously for me.
Right. Well, Mary, you said something, and I know you've told me this before, but I'm just thinking, your grandmother was blind
Yes.
and raised
Yeah.
4 grandchildren?
Yes.
How was that?
Well, when we first went to stay with her, she wasn't blind, and unfortunately, she had diabetes, and from the diabetes, she went blind later on in life. And for me personally, to see her go through that, because she was able to see, and then the next thing you know, she, it just gradually started to happen to her in terms of losing her eyesight and everything. But the thing about it is that I never saw her complain. She was, truly a born-again believer, and she really exemplified that in everything that she did, because I never heard my grandmother complain about being blind. A lot of people like, why me, why me?
Right,
But that
right.
wasn't my grandmother.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. That's just absolutely amazing. Well, let's talk about this latest book that you have written, The Invisible Covering, Trading My Grief for God's Supernatural Grace. Recently became Amazon #1 bestseller.
Yeah, it was a bestseller, not number one.
No,
but
well, #1 to me. So I want to say congratulations
Thank
to you
you.
again for that. That's great.
Thank you.
Tell us what the book is about and what inspired you to write the book.
Oh, I love sharing this story. I hope I don't cry. The book is about how the Lord led me to know that my sister, that I was very, very close to, was going to pass away. And it wasn't until after different events took place that I realized that that was what the dream was really all about. And but the book was written to really help people who are going through the grieving process, and that there is a ray of hope. There is hope in the end. And so I share throughout the book different things that can really help people to walk through that path of grief. Because my sister was just a year older than me. And nobody wants to have a dream that says, okay, you need to be prepared for this because, okay, this is what's going to happen. And I was like, oh, okay, when I had the dream, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but it was just one of those where I wanted to document not only what had happened, but to be able to use it as a means to help other people going through the grieving process, especially now as we're going through COVID-19 and all the other things that are going on, because I know a lot of people have just really why questions, and I really do address a lot of the why questions that we have, because sometimes people think that you shouldn't ask God why, but then I remind them that Job, he asked God a lot of whys, and he had to listen, but he did ask God about different scenarios as to why he was going through the things that he was going through. And not to say that I've gone through Job kind of crises, but it's the fact that, yes, God does want us to ask why, because he wants us to be honest, because he already knows what's in our heart anyway.
That's true. And he never gets tired of answering questions. I know I'm always doing that too. I'm always asking him why. Why me? And I know that, and I know you agree with me, grief is different for everyone. I remember when my brother passed about 7 years ago, the grief for me was different. I cried a lot in the beginning, but then I pushed myself into work, and I was just all over, just doing everything, where I never really settled down and really grieved. And some people say, well, did you grieve properly? But it's different for everybody. So I don't know how you take that term proper. How do you grieve properly? But for you, how difficult was it for you to recall the memories and then translate that into paper and pen?
Oh, that is a really good question, because this is actually the second book that I have written to really deal with the grieving process because, like we mentioned earlier, I was raised by my grandmother. And so to help me to get through that process, I wrote a book that was called I Never Said Goodbye because I was in Korea when my grandmother passed. Mm-hmm. And so I used that as a healing mechanism for me to just kind of recall the memories of the things that we had shared. So when it came down to my sister, I just said, and it was really my sister and my mom because they had passed 8 months apart. Mm-hmm. And although my mom had been sick, and it wasn't like a real surprise when my mom passed because she had been very, very sick, but when my sister passed unexpectedly, that was like a shock. It was like, oh no. And I remember saying just as good, oh God, no, not my sister, because my niece calls me on a Wednesday morning. And I had the dream that Monday night, but she calls me that Wednesday morning, and she's screaming and yelling, and this was actually my great niece, and she was just telling me about what was going on, and so. But to get back to your question regarding recalling the events, it was almost like walking through it again, but because of the fact that the Lord was healing a lot of the areas that needed to be healed, and only He could do it. No amount of medication, no amount of talking to somebody or this or that was going to do what only He could do in the grieving process that I was going through. And I love what you said about the fact that it is different for other, different people, because it is that we cannot argue with. It is truly different because there are people who would say, oh, girl, get over it. You can, No, you've got to allow people the time to grieve and allow God to just heal them as only He can. And that's what I always tell people, only He can heal you because He knows the relationship that you truly did have with that person that passed, and only He can heal you from that.
You mentioned that you were in Korea.
Yes.
Can you tell us why you were in Korea, or is that something that is personal? Or
no, it was part of my military career. A person, growing up in little bitty Roseboro, North Carolina, I joined the military. I'll be honest with you, I really wanted to travel. I love serving my country, and I did that with all, humility and everything else. But I really wanted to travel. I grew up in this very, very small town, and so I volunteered to go to Korea. And so Korea was my second military assignment in the military.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Now, what do you want people, or what do you hope that people will take away from your book? What is it that you want them to get?
What I would really like for people to take away from the book is hope. Because a lot of times, people, and I'll be honest with you, I've known people who have lost loved ones, and then 10 years later, the clothes are still hanging up in the closet. The room is just like it was when the person passed. Mm-hmm. And I won't argue against, because first of all, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or anything like that, or a counselor, grief counselor, but I do know of people who have gone through those situations where they have just, it's almost like they did not continue to live past the point that person died. Mm-hmm. And they just be, and so in the book, I try to offer a hope. And I have what is called breakfast bars of hope, and they're just really scriptures and different scenarios in the book that really help to just encourage and uplift people as they're going through the grieving process. And I ask them to do, maybe certain things that will help them to just kind of, okay, you're not in this alone. We've all kind of walked down that path, even though it's different paths for different people, but we can be there to help each other as that community of hope.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, in the book, and when I read it, I was thinking the same thing. Mysterious dream. Yes. Talk about that dream.
Oh my goodness! I'm one. I know that God deals with people through dreams, and it was just that I never had a dream like the one that I had leading up until my sister's death.
Was it vivid? It was vivid, very vivid.
It was. I never recall the dream like I did that particular dream, because even with the research that I did afterwards, and it talked about I think it was like 95% of us we forget our dreams or the content of the dream by the time we wake up. And so that Monday night, and in the book it just leads up to a lot of events that really led up to the dream. But that particular night I have this dream, and it starts out that I realized later it had to have been a hospital that I was walking in, and I walked down the corridor and I looked to the left and I see my sister lying up there on a bed, and I hollered and I said, Jean, and that was her middle name, but I always call her by her middle name. And so I looked, but she didn't respond. And then for some reason, I was drawn to the bed covering that she was on, and it just so happened that it was burgundy. And I don't know why, I was just drawn to that color. But then as the dream progresses, I find myself hearing a voice, and this person's all jolly and jubilant and everything, and they're talking to the people. And then as I move forward in the dream, I noticed it's my sister. Anybody knew my sister, they knew how quiet and shy she was. And all of a sudden, my sister is standing up there talking to these people, and she looks different. She looks like healthy, and my sister at the time was very, very sick, and because the Wednesday that she would end up having, I don't know exactly what it was where she just fainted and went into a coma. Yeah, she was supposed to have actually had a blood clot removed from her leg that day, and she kept saying, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, and all of that. And I just said, oh, Jean, you'll be fine. I was just recalling that event that led up until the dream. But in the dream, getting back to the dream, as I'm hearing my sister talk, and I was like, wow, what is going on here? And but then, just like she was on a clock, she says, I gotta go now, I gotta go now. And she takes off, and I don't know if it's like a window or a door that she goes toward. And then there was two men that were standing there, and I said, where's Jean, where's Jean? And they said, she went that way. And just like that, I woke up.
You woke up.
And I was like, I said, man, that was the weirdest dream. That's all I recall. I said, that was the weirdest dream. But I remember everything that happened in that dream, and especially the color of the bed linen that she was lying on. That's why I wasn't sure if it was a hospital or not. But then as everything began to progress, it was a hospital. And that the bed, it was a twin-sized bed. And it was a little room that I passed, that she was in. So that's when because you don't want to think what it was, it's like as events took place, but I knew that was a hospital.
But usually bed coverings in hospitals is like all white or beige or something. So what color were these? Vivid colors or?
It was burgundy, which was so shocking. She was lying on the bed, and the color that stood out to me on the bed that she was lying on was burgundy. And as you will find out later, but you already noticed since you read the book, why that color stood out to me and why it is so important with the events that occurred.
I read the book, but some of the things that you're saying are answering questions that I had that I didn't want to ask you at that time, because I knew that it was, that you were going through a grieving process. So I just was trying to figure it out myself. So what's significance of the dream and its relationship to the outcome of events? Can you tie that together?
Yes, and that's why oh my God. As you can imagine, when all of this happened, I had the dream on Monday night, and then Wednesday I get the phone call from my great niece, and then my niece jumps on the phone because it was her mom and everything. So they was telling me about what was going on, and my sister had basically been dead about 20 minutes, and the paramedics were on the way and everything, and they were able to get like a little faint pulse and everything. So that was enough for me to get everything ready to go down to North Carolina. And so I go to the hospital. In the meantime, I'm jumping over some things in the book, but the Lord puts me on this fast, and I fast for 3 days in total fast, no food, no water. And I'm thinking out of that, oh man, God's going to do something great and miraculous here, and I'm so happy. And I get there, and everything is just so, you know that grief is everywhere. And so we go through several days of looking for a change with my sister and everything, because now she's in an induced coma that she never came out of. And so while we're there praying and believing God and everything, one of the nurses one day just happens to lift up the underpinning, the top cover that my sister is lying on. And just like that, you would have thought, because I do this because I'm shocked. And I was like, oh my goodness, it was burgundy.
What? In the hospital?
It was burgundy. Who think of a burgundy cover?
In the hospital.
Any kind of burgundy cover. The top sheet was white, but the underpinning sheet was burgundy.
That's really...
And it took me back to the dream. And because of that, I took a picture, because I said, nobody's going to believe me when I tell them this. I took a picture, and I have it today, and it's in the book.
Yes.
And it's the fact that right there and then, I knew that what the outcome was going to be, because it took me back to the dream. And I knew that she was happy. And I forgot to tell you in the dream that when I saw my sister talking and everything, behind her was these beautiful blue clouds. And they was just so majestic, the clouds and everything. And I just knew then that my sister was gone.
Yeah.
I knew she was gone.
You had a peace.
And the hard part about it was like, how do you continue to encourage your family that are there, my niece and my nephew, when you know in your heart that God has given you a word regarding the dream? Because now I knew why I had the dream, and I also knew why I was on the fast, because when 3 days had gone by and nothing had happened with my sister, I said, Lord, what happened here? I thought surely you were going to raise her. I thought surely there was going to be a change. And the Lord said, and this is how I knew the love of God is just greater than anything else we could ever have, because it was then that he said that you just need my covering, because you had to be strong for the rest of the family. Right. I was the second oldest, and everything was just now on me to really help the family. And if I was so broken, and it's like, how am I going to be there for my niece, my nephew, my other brothers? One was overseas, the other one was in New Jersey, and the one in New Jersey was sick. And it was like, oh God, without your strength, there's no way I could have made it. Yeah. And so that's how we get to the invisible covering. The Holy Spirit was that invisible covering, and is the invisible covering.
Amen. I certainly agree with that. That's an outstanding testimony. Yes. How did God give you the title of the book?
That was basically it. It was like when I experienced all of the hurt and the pain, and it was like, until you were able to let me handle that. You can't handle it by yourself. I know the relationship that you had with your sister. I know how close you guys were, but yet, until you're willing to give that grief over to me and allow me to just shield you and cover you and be there. Because a lot of times I often tell people, in the night hours when there's nobody there, and the Lord is there to cover you and to just shield you and just say, okay, you're not alone. Right. You're not alone. I'm here with you.
Even sometimes when we don't realize that He is our covering.
Yes, yes.
He is our invisible covering on many different elements and facets of our life.
Yes.
Wow, that's an amazing testimony. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now let's talk about you are a serial entrepreneur.
Yes.
You're a certified John Maxwell team speaker, coach, and trainer.
Yes.
You're highly sought after keynote speaker. You have been featured on ABC, on Fox, CBS, and NBC, and in print, all types of print that you've been in.
Right.
If our viewers want to get in touch with you, to just find out more about what you're talking to, or even to minister to them, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, they can reach me at my website, which is drmarygillam.com. drmarygillam.com, yes.
That is, and then the book, they can, Amazon, I'm assuming they can go
or any
right.
of the other book venues, they can go there and order. But yes, all of my books are on Amazon. And even if they go to my website, but it will direct them to Amazon and stuff like that.
Okay. Now, one thing I didn't say earlier, we have a couple of minutes, and I want you to have the last word. But before that, you have a show as well.
Yes.
That you host.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, thank you for giving me this opportunity. The show is a leadership table talk, and but basically it is to help people to grow and develop their leadership skills and talents. And out of that show, I was able to develop a board game that has been used now throughout the government and other places and universities and so forth, a lot of nonprofits, just to help them to develop their future leaders. And great opportunity there.
Thank you. Now, we have a little over a minute, and I want to give you the last word. What advice do you have for women who are really in a rut right now? They're trying to figure out which way to go, up, down, around, this way, that way. What would you tell them to help them get themselves back on track, both spiritually and professionally?
Oh, Tia, that's a great question. What I often tell people today is the word reset, because in business school, everybody often talk about the fact that you have to do a contingency plan for business. And in the time in which we live today, the word is reset, because what you did prior to the pandemic and all of the things that we're experiencing, you may not necessarily have those opportunities, but you have to really think about, okay, what is it that God is really teaching me or showing me or telling me? Because I tell people, even in business, you have to make sure that you have His download so you can follow His direction. And because I knew some folk who launched right before we went into a pandemic, and I said, did you check with the Lord first to make sure that this was the right time to do this? Because now it's like, okay, God, what do I do now? Right. But that's why I think it's so important that we just really understand the importance of, okay, God has not forgotten us, but we just need to be willing to reset.
Reset. I like that word, reset.
Reset.
Well, Dr. Mary Gillam, thank you so much for coming. You're welcome anytime.
Oh, thank you.
And just appreciate so much your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for watching In the Cool of the Day with our special guest, Dr. Mary M Gillam. If you have questions about this segment today and have questions for Dr. Gillam, her information is scrolling on your television screen. Please tune in next week for another great show on In the Cool of the Day. I'm Tia Young, your host and producer, wishing you a wonderful day.